Welcome, everyone. I want to say welcome to our audience as well as our people online and introduce the team here tonight. We have our director, Sarah Levere, our deputy director, Adrienne Rushton, logistics specialist, Ryan Childress, and I'm Robin Beliveau, the outreach and training specialist. We're all here from the Brunswick County Board of Elections. So thank you for joining us for our fourth seminar in our election education series. Tonight's seminar is all about absentee by mail voting. Tonight, our presentation will cover what is absentee by mail and who is eligible to vote absentee, how to request an absentee by mail ballot, completing your absentee ballot packet, returning your absentee by mail ballot, and absentee board meetings. Now, in North Carolina, absentee by mail voting is an absentee ballot completed in advance of an election and submitted through the mail by a voter instead of voting at the polls. Absentee by mail is a form of early voting from a place other than a polling location. The voter requests and receives their ballot via mail prior to Election Day. The voter returns the ballot in the following ways: through the mail, such as the United States Postal Service, UPS, or FedEx, or the voter can return the ballot in person to an early voting polling location or to the Board of Elections office. While an absentee by mail ballot can be accepted prior to an election, they are not tabulated until Election Day. And in North Carolina, voters do not need a specific reason to vote absentee by mail. Voters must request an absentee ballot be sent to them. This is done through an official North Carolina absentee ballot request form. If a voter does not formally request an absentee by mail ballot, they will not receive a ballot packet from the Board of Elections office. Voting organizations and political parties will often send third-party mailings with our return address on them. These are not official mailings from the Board of Elections. We do not mail ballots to voters unless they use official channels to request their ballot. Often, these third-party mailings have a sample ballot included. Voters may receive multiple third-party mailers, and these samples are just that. Samples. A sample ballot can be used to help prepare a voter for an election. Sample ballots are not official ballots, and completing and returning them will not be counted as a vote. As samples and unofficial ballots, they will not be accepted by the board or the voting equipment. Now, there are two methods to access the official state request form. Voters can use the state online portal or use an official paper form, which can be downloaded and printed from online or picked up at your local County Board of Elections office. Voters who use a printed form can either mail the form or it can be delivered in person to our office. If the form is brought to our office, the person delivering the form will need to complete a return log required by the state. Voters can request an absentee ballot up to 1 week prior to the election. When our office receives the electronic or printed request form, the required information on the request form is verified. If the request is incomplete, an incomplete letter and new request form is sent to the voter for correction and resubmission. For example, the North Carolina driver's license number or last four of the voter's social security number were not provided, or there's no record of the voter's registration, or the request was not signed. Ballots are available 30 days before a municipal election, 50 days before a primary election, and 60 days before a general election. The official packet will come directly from the Board of Elections. The envelope will state it is official election mail. The packet will come with instructions on how to return the ballot, and there are specific requirements on the envelope. They must be completed per the included instructions. The official ballot will be in the packet, and the packet will include the special return envelope in which the ballot must be returned in. People in the same household should make sure they keep their ballot packets separate from one another. Ballots and envelopes have unique ballot identification numbers that correspond to one another. Voters who do wish to vote absentee by mail can access the official form online through the state's absentee ballot portal. The link to the portal is located on our website and the North Carolina State Board of Elections website. At the bottom of the portal page, the voter can click on option 1 to request their absentee ballot, which will take them through the online form. The portal offers the voter the opportunity to complete the official North Carolina State absentee ballot request form online. A person must be a registered voter in North Carolina to use this portal. The voter will need to input their first and last name, date of birth, and the county they reside in. This information is required. Once the information is completed, the voter will click Continue on the bottom right of their screen to go to the next page in the portal. The next screen is the voter verification screen. The voter will need to input their North Carolina driver's license or North Carolina DMV ID number or the last 4 of their social security number into the fields. Voters should then click Continue in the bottom right corner of their screen. The voter confirmation page will appear. The voter should see their name, date of birth, city, state, zip, and county listed. To request their absentee ballot by mail, the voter will click Continue. Instructions for the absentee ballot request form will appear. Voters will scroll down to see the continued instructions, and voters should read through all the instructions, which will end with explaining the requirement for the voter's signature. As the voter continues to scroll down the page, they will move into the form. In section 1, the voter will need to choose the election date. This is a state form and thus has dates for other county elections. Our election date is November 7th, 2023. Section 2 requires the voter to input their name. The form may auto-populate with the information from the voter's registration record. If the voter makes any change here from what was initially listed on the voter confirmation page, their voter registration will be updated to reflect that. Section 3 requires date of birth and either the state DMV driver's license or state ID number, or the last 4 of the voter's social security number. The form may auto-populate with the information from the voter's registration record. Section 4 requires the voter's residential address. This area does not auto-populate, and the voter will need to manually complete this information. If a voter moved within the county, they can change the information here, and it will update their voter registration record. There is also a place to put a mailing address if the voter receives mail at a different location than their residence. If a voter adds a new mailing address or changes their mailing address here, it will update the voter's registration record. Section 5 asks where our office should send their ballot. The voter can choose to have it sent to their residence, their mailing address of record, or a different address. If they choose a different address, the form will prompt them to enter that address in this section. Section 6 only applies to a voter who needs accessible voting options. The voter can skip this section if it is not needed or check off which choice applies to them. Section 7 requires a phone number and email address for the voter. As the voter continues to scroll, they will come to Section 8, which only needs to be checked off if the person requesting the form is doing so on behalf of the voter, or if the voter asks for help due to a disability. Section 9 is checked off if the person assisting the voter in completing the form is doing so on behalf of the voter. Section 10 asks if the voter is military on active duty or a spouse or dependent of an active duty military member or a U.S. citizen currently overseas. There is an option to check off if the answer is none of these. To move to the signature page, the voter will need to click Continue on the bottom right of the online form. We are now at the signature portion of the request form. The voter will click in the box and use their mouse to sign the form, or if they have a touchscreen device, can use their finger or a stylus. The voter will click Continue at the bottom right after signing. The screen will show that the voter's request application is being built. Once the form is built, the voter will have the option to review their application for an absentee by mail ballot. To review the form, click on the Review Application button. Clicking Review Application will bring up the completed form. The voter can check to make sure everything is completed and correct. At the bottom of the form will be a Close Preview button. When the voter clicks this button, it will bring up the Review Application page again. If there were mistakes, the voter can go back and change those. But if the voter is satisfied their request form is correct, then they will click the Submit button on the bottom right. A page will come up confirming that the submission was successful with a date and time stamp. Voters can also choose to utilize the paper North Carolina absentee ballot request form to request their absentee by mail ballot. Voters can download and print the form from our website or the state's website. Forms can also be obtained at the Board of Elections office. The voter can then complete the paper form and mail it to our office, or they can bring the completed paper form to our office, which will require the person returning the request form to complete a return log per North Carolina state requirements. Once the voter receives their official absentee by mail packet, they should begin by reading through the included instructions. Voters should keep their return envelope and ballot together. This is especially important in residences where more than one voter is receiving and voting an absentee by mail ballot. The return container and ballot will have a ballot identification number on it that is unique to the voter. The return envelope has areas that need to be completed per the included instructions. The voter will vote in the presence of either two witnesses that are at least 18 or a notary. The witnesses are not seeing how the voter votes, but could confirm that the voter marked the ballot if necessary. Once the voter has voted their ballot, they should seal it in their return envelope. The voter should then sign the envelope in the appropriate spot. The witnesses or notary then complete their section on the envelope, and if the voter required assistance to complete their ballot, the bottom section will need to be completed. Voters will now be asked to show photo ID when voting in North Carolina. This will include absentee by mail voters. The ballot packet will include a photo ID envelope. Voters who vote by mail must include a photocopy of an acceptable ID inside the photo ID envelope that comes with their ballot. Or the voter can complete an ID exception form with the absentee ballot return envelope. The voter will need to select from the list of permitted objections on the form. A reasonable impediment could be that the voter is unable to attach a copy of their photo ID, or they have a religious objection to being photographed. For an updated list of acceptable IDs and ID exceptions, voters can visit the North Carolina State Board of Elections website. Now, the voter can mail the absentee ballot or deliver it to our office in person. If the voter is mailing the ballot, they will need to provide the appropriate postage to the envelope. We also recommend the voters obtain a postmark from the post office when mailing. If the ballot is returned in person, the person returning the ballot will need to complete an absentee ballot return log. Per state requirements, those eligible to return a completed absentee ballot besides the voter are a legal guardian or a near relative. Near relative is defined by spouse, sibling, child, parent, grandparent, grandchild, mother or father-in-law, son or daughter-in-law, step-parent or stepchild. A person is also eligible to return the ballot if the voter requested assistance due to a disability. When our office receives the official ballot return envelope, it is date stamped. The outside of the envelope is verified to ensure all voter and witness requirements are met. If there is a deficiency, and depending on the deficiency, either a cure letter is sent to the voter or the old ballot is spoiled and a new ballot reissued. Here are some common deficiencies that voters make. The voter did not sign the envelope. One or both of the witnesses did not sign the envelope. There is only one witness. There was no witnesses or notary. There is missing witness information such as an address. The envelope is not sealed. An absentee cure certification or cure letter is sent when a voter's signature is missing or in the wrong place on their absentee ballot envelope. For the other deficiencies, the ballot is considered ineligible and will be spoiled. A new ballot is reissued and the voter will receive a new absentee ballot packet. Absentee board meetings begin 5 weeks prior to a primary or general election and 3 weeks prior to a municipal election. The schedule of board meetings can be found on our website under the Board Meetings tab. These meetings are live streamed and open to the public. Ballots are presented at weekly absentee board meetings. Once reviewed by the board, then staff take preparatory steps in opening and scanning the approved ballots. Opening the envelope and removing the approved ballot is done by a bipartisan team under the supervision of the Board of Elections. Approved absentee ballots are scanned at the absentee meetings. The number of approved ballots is tracked at each meeting, but results are not tallied until Election Day. Now, there are some common mistakes that voters make that are not discovered until these meetings when the envelope is opened. If a voter uses whiteout to correct a mistake they made when completing their ballot, or has a spill on their ballot, the tabulator will not accept the scan of that ballot. Our bipartisan team will then have to duplicate the selections on a new ballot so that the tabulator will accept the scan. The bipartisan team is made up of 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. A member from one party will read out the choices from the voter's original ballot, while a member from the other party oversees. As the selections are read, a member of one party will complete the new ballot according to the voter's choices read aloud, while a member from the other party oversees. This is also closely watched by our bipartisan board. If when the envelope is opened, it is determined that the CIV numbers on the envelope and ballot do not match, then the ballot will be spoiled and reissued to the name on the envelope. Disapproved absentee ballots are presented to the Board of Elections for review. The corrective action taken is discussed. For example, contacting the voter, reissuing a new ballot packet, or sending a cure letter. At the conclusion of an absentee board meeting, all ballots are placed into a bin and locked with security seals. The serial numbers on the seals are logged per meeting. The final absentee board meeting is the last time approved absentee ballots are scanned prior to the election. The last meeting is the Monday before the election. Absentee ballots received after 5 p.m. the Monday prior to the election through the deadline for returning are opened at pre-canvass. The final meetings of the election are pre-canvass and canvass. Canvass is where election results will be certified. We will go into more detail on the certification process in our election education seminar on December 7th. Cure letters received up until 5 p.m. the day before canvass are presented with the accompanying ballot for approval. Any approved absentee ballots are opened, valid provisional ballots are accepted, and results are finalized. If a voter does not return their absentee ballot, they can still cast their ballot in person during early voting or on election day. Voters who decide not to vote their absentee by mail ballot should dispose of their ballot via the same means with which they would dispose of any personal document. When the voter presents to vote in person, the computer system will not show they have voted by absentee, as no ballot was returned and approved. They will be able to scan their ballot into the tabulator. The ballot scanned at the polling location will count. Voters should vote in person at their assigned polling location if their ballot has not been received or accepted by Election Day. If the absentee ballot was disapproved and it is too late to reissue and mail a new ballot, the voter should vote in person. The ballot voted in person will be counted. Once an in-person vote is tabulated, any absentee ballot received will not be counted. For example, a voter's absentee ballot arrives via mail at the Board of Elections office on Election Day. This is after the final absentee board meeting, which occurred the day before, and thus will not be reviewed for eligibility until pre-canvass. It will not be approved at the pre-canvass meeting as the voter voted in person on Election Day. And of course, if you're unsure if your ballot has been accepted and received, you can call the Board of Elections office. Now, I hope you enjoyed tonight's seminar and that you have a better understanding of absentee by mail voting. Before we conclude, I would like to mention our upcoming events. On Wednesday, August 16th, will be our voting equipment seminar, where folks will learn about the equipment used in Brunswick County. We'll give an introduction to the equipment, what type of testing is done to ensure accuracy, and the security measures in place. Thursday, September 21st is our Prepare to Vote seminar, where you can learn what steps you can take to ensure a smooth voting experience, such as confirming your registration, knowing your deadlines and important dates, learning about same-day registration, finding your sample ballots and your assigned precinct, provisional ballots, what are they and why they are important, and candidate party promotion, what you can wear when voting, and of course, dealing with electioneers. On Thursday, December 7th, we will go over certifying an election. What is canvass? We'll talk about voter history, provisional ballots, and our sample audit count. Now, if you missed our first three seminars, you can find the recordings on our YouTube channel at Brunswick NC Votes. Our first seminar was an overview of voting in North Carolina. Our second seminar was on voter registration, and our third seminar was on accessible voting in Brunswick County and North Carolina. Now, we also have a few more poll worker orientations scheduled before we begin our training in September for the municipal election. Poll workers or election officials operate the polls and provide assistance to voters throughout our 27 precincts during early voting and on Election Day. And we rely on hundreds of poll workers each election to maintain our voting sites. Now, our poll worker orientations are no obligation sessions, and they provide interested community members the opportunity to learn the roles, responsibilities, and the necessary requirements of being a poll worker in Brunswick County. So we have two upcoming in-person sessions here in the Commissioner's Chambers, July 26th at 2 o'clock and August 24th at 10. And we'll also have an online session if you're unable to come in person on Thursday, August 10th at 6 p.m. Being a poll worker is such a fun and rewarding experience, and it's such a great way to play an integral part in the elections process. So I encourage you to attend a session to find out more. So thank you for coming. We appreciate your time here today. I have a slide up with our contact information, website, and social media handles, and I encourage you to follow us on any of these sites that you use. We continue to work on expanding our social media presence. We want to provide accurate and timely information across as many media channels as possible so that many people in our community can benefit from that information. So tell your family, friends, neighbors to follow us, share the information when you see it on your social media sites. And of course, if you have any questions at any time after this meeting, you can go to our website and complete the submission form that's currently on our homepage. There's also an email address listed on this slide if you have any further questions after this meeting. So now I'm going to open the floor for questions. We'll start with our audience and then move to our online questions.
The exceptions could be, my understanding is we have not seen the exception form yet. I do believe for absentee by mail, one of the exceptions would be I don't have the capability to make a copy of my photo ID. I do not have a copier at home. There's a religious exemption if you have a religious objection to having your photograph taken, if you've lost your wallet and you haven't had a chance to go get your new driver's license yet. So there are any number of exceptions. And there's also a box where a voter can write out the reason that they have not provided it.
Yes. Several times during the presentation, you spoke about mail-in ballots that weren't acceptable, information missing, and you used the word spoiled. Can you define what that means and what the action is related to spoiled?
Okay, when Robin's referring to spoiling a ballot, so what we do is we go into the system, to the state system that we use, and we spoil that ballot. We tell it that it's no longer a valid ballot. And so that affords us the opportunity to reissue a new ballot. So even if after the fact somebody tries to return that ballot, the system has already marked it as spoiled, it would not be accepted.
That mean spoiled document is shredded or kept on record somewhere in case there's a discrepancy or the actual voter has a problem?
I'm trying to think of an example. So for
I mean,
example,
what happens to the paper ballot that gets spoiled? The one that is no longer
if it's in
valid?
our possession,
Yes.
it's retained
For how long?
for 22 months.
Okay.
For 22 months. Now, if we have had a situation where the voter has called and requested a new ballot, they made a mistake, they'd like us to reissue one, and then they destroy that themselves.
Okay.
So we don't have access to that.
And you had another question, ma'am. Okay.
You said that online you're allowed to update on the absentee request form, you're allowed to update your information. What information are you allowed to update? And is the online form the exact same one as the one I would get in paper form?
So the online form is the same one that you would get in a paper form, and there is certain information that you can update. You can update your name, you can update your address, but it has to be the voter. So say, for example, your spouse is requesting an absentee on your behalf. Nothing will be updated if somebody's requesting that for you. If you, the voter, are requesting it, so we cannot update birth dates. That's not something that would be updated. And I think that would limit it. Party affiliation is not something. Yeah, just name and address.
Just name and address, not driver's license number or social security number. That can't be done on the absentee ballot
Okay,
request form.
so on the online, it says that you said that the driver's license or social security number for last four are required. What if the registration doesn't have that?
What if you're talking about the voter profile doesn't include that information?
There's a lot of registrations that don't have either a driver's license or a social security number.
So my understanding is that, yeah, it would be validated through either the DMV or the Social Security Administration, and then that information would be included in the voter's profile moving forward.
Okay, but what if they don't have a driver's license or a social security number?
They won't be able to access.
They're not
the
eligible.
portal.
They're not eligible to
They're not
access.
eligible?
No, they're not eligible to access the absentee portal. No.
Not the online portal. Doesn't mean that they can't
they
vote
are able to
absentee.
do
They
a
won't be
paper
able to
ballot?
access the portal because
No,
the portal.
they wouldn't be able to request an absentee ballot, period,
Okay.
Without that information.
without that information.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to clarify. On both the absentee ballot when it's mailed back and the envelope in which it is mailed, 2 witness signatures on each or a notary on each? Or is it 2 signatures on the ballot and no signature? I mean, I'm confused with that.
That's okay. You don't write, there's no signatures on the ballot. Nobody's signing the ballot, the
So
actual ballot.
witness
It's the
signatures
envelope.
are only on the envelope.
That's correct.
Or in place of 2 witnesses, a notary.
That's correct.
Yes, and it's important to note that the witnesses are witnessing that you are voting the ballot, not what you are voting for.
Understood.
Okay.
Understood. Thank you.
Yes.
On the witnesses, what is the proof? Do they have to have a legible, like writing their name or signature? I don't know what the form is. It's how do you prove that it's a real person or just somebody just scribbling something? Is there anything there?
As far as the witness and then, so for a witness, they have to list their printed name, they have to list their address, their full address, and they have to sign.
Okay, so there is some kind of track record. Are they testifying in a, are they holding themselves up to a legal standard that they did do that? So that, are they subject to perjury if they didn't?
Sorry, I do not believe that the witnesses are signing an attestation like the voter is.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit different, but the witnesses, if that ballot or the validity of it, or did the voter mark it, if that were ever called into question, like through an election protest, we would use the information provided on the envelope to contact the witness and have them come in and provide information about witnessing the ballot being marked. Mhm.
As far as the signature with a mouse, that seems like a little sketchy. Literally.
Why you do it?
We're currently not a signature required.
We currently do not require signature verification.
It's just a request.
Okay, I do have another question. How do you know it's a third party request?
You mean as a voter, if you're receiving a third party request, or how do we know?
How do you know? How does the voter know? How does anybody know if this is a third party request for coming in? You mean-
Because it won't have the official information on the envelope. It wouldn't be an official packet from the Board of Elections with the official envelope and the
Have
official
you
ballot.
received those requests from third parties?
Have people mailed them or sent them to us? Adrienne? can
They
talk
have,
to
and
this.
I will say that they do, the forms that they use are typically very similar to the forms that you'll see a North Carolina
There's a
absentee.
lot of phishing and email scams and stuff that go on, so I just wanted to know.
Absolutely. As far as a sample ballot, it's not going to be an official election. It's not going to be an official absentee ballot packet. So when you receive something from us, as Robin was stating, it'll state that it's an official election mail. So that is one way to tell that it's a third party, that it's not from us. Typically what I see and hear about is third party mailing of sample ballots. So if they're sending out sample ballots to voters, especially in general years. Or absent, sorry, did I say ballots? I'm sorry, I meant absentee request forms. Occasionally they'll also send out sample ballots, but that's rare. I mostly see the absent
Registration or
voter registration.
So in third party forms, when they come to you, well, one, we would never initiate a mass mailing of absentee request forms, voter registration forms. But somewhere on the packet, it does tell the voter who sent it. It's probably not very apparent, but it is on the packet. It's usually like a bifold newspaper material. And when they start coming in, we can tell that their uniform, and if we haven't already been given a heads up or gotten a call by a voter that these are hitting mailboxes, we can tell when they start showing up in the office.
And in terms of the ballot itself, so if somebody sent in a sample ballot thinking they were sending in an official ballot, it won't be accepted by our tabulator. So it can't be accepted as a valid ballot.
So I have a question. When you tabulate these, would the mail-in ballots not being sent the last week? Will they be tabulated so the results will come up first, or will be done later in the count? So
So-
it sounds like you counted them up front.
So as long as we have received and accepted the ballot by the absentee board meeting on the Monday prior, so the day before the election, those are generally the first ballots that are tabulated on election night when the polls close. So they've all been scanned in and then they're tabulated when the polls close at 7:30 PM on election day.
Often we hear that saying all the absentee
Yeah.
ballots are not in yet, so wait. And
They may
you
not
know, like
be.
the last week is what you're talking about.
Right, so the week of canvass and pre-canvass, so that's post the absentee meeting on Monday. Anything that arrives after that won't be counted until the pre-canvass meeting.
So anything eligible after,
Anything eligible.
anything eligible. So currently, they can send it up to 3 days after we can receive it. So it has to be postmarked by the election date and we can receive it up to 3 days after.
So what if you spoil a ballot in the last week? Do you have enough time? What if they don't have enough time? They just lose out. Voting?
We contact voters directly if
Okay.
there's an issue and it's so close to the election day. We make phone calls to let them know. And they can either, I think if there's time, they can come in to pick up. No, we just tell them to go vote at early voting or
Yeah,
election day.
we emphasize early voting dates, times. We also encourage folks if that time frame, and you're right, that has happened where it is so close where we encourage them, if you can, please get out on election day. I mean, it's a great question.
So one other question as a prior military person, I
Right.
understand that now you can vote by email if you're military overseas. So how do you handle that as far as all this? Is it, you have to do this by, as far as scanning is it PDF document or something that they show their ID and?
There are 2 ways for, so military and overseas voters, they can either vote through a portal. And then we receive that information and then our bipartisan duplication team will duplicate that ballot on an actual official ballot. Or we've had them where they email it, same scenario, where our bipartisan duplication team will duplicate that ballot so that it can be read into a tabulator.
I know this is a much better system as far as doing that than it used to be, because I rarely thought my vote would ever count because
And I do want to emphasize that for a military or overseas voter, they do not have to have witnesses like a civilian absentee voter. So they're just signing and attesting. So the overseas voters, they don't have to get witnesses like a civilian does. That's a little bit different. So we didn't really go in detail about the overseas and military voting, but it's pretty different. Yes.
Do you send those emails out? Do you send the ballots out to the overseas military forever? They've got an email,
One calendar year.
just
One calendar year, and they do have the option to extend their request another calendar year when they return a ballot.
When is the pre-canvass meeting? What date is that?
That's going to be on the 17th. It's typically the day before the official canvass because it takes so long to look through all of the provisional ballots. And we do advertise that date.
I think the 16th is pre-canvass. and the
Okay.
17th is
And
canvass.
Okay, the
you live-
16th.
You live stream the board meetings for the absentee.
We do. All of those
Is
board
that
meetings are
published?
live. Yes, we
Before how long?
send notification through our email list. So if you're on our email list and get notifications about board meetings, we send it out that way. And then before every meeting, we send, here's the agenda. Here's what we've got going on in the board meeting. So you'll know about it that way. And then it's always the same link and you can always find that schedule on our website under board meetings.
Okay, so it's actually a board meeting.
It is a board
You
meeting.
can look up and you know what time it is.
Yes, we know what time it
Exactly.
is. We know
Ahead
when
of
it's
time.
starting. We know where it's at. So all of the board meetings for this year are already scheduled. So we know the majority of them are going to be in here, in this room.
If somebody hasn't registered and they want to register by mail at the same time as requesting an absentee ballot, how does that work?
I like how you just switched that over there. As long as it isn't, as long as we haven't reached the voter registration deadline, they can request it. So our processes, our registration clerk processes the request form, the voter application first, and then she provides us with the absentee request form, and then we process the absentee request. So we make sure that the voter application has gone through first prior to processing the absentee request.
So does that have to be 30 days before the election?
Does what have to be 30? You're talking voter registration. Sorry, yes, the voter registration
So they have to do
deadline.
it 25 days before the election. And then once that's approved, then they can get their ballot.
Did you have any online, Robin?
I did, I
Okay.
just answered, someone was asking, if the phone number is incorrect on their voter roll, as many may be, or they left it off. I replied that we would cross-reference with the phone number that they're required to put on their absentee by mail request form and go from there.
Yeah, so
Adrian?
I do. On the absentee request form, phone number is not required, but it is helpful for us to get in touch with folks when they do have.
Is the email?
It's not required.
So, no.
Correct.
And the question was if the phone number is correct, do we update that in the voter rolls? So if there's an incorrect phone number on their voter registration and a correct phone number on their absentee by mail request form, do we make that update?
We typically don't use the information on the absentee request form. It's usually just name and mailing address. And the reason that I state that is because, again, you can request on behalf of somebody, on behalf of your child, your spouse, and you could be providing your information as the requester. So if you're doing that, you don't want that information affiliated with that voter's profile. So I'm erring on the side of no. That's not something we do.
Yes, and the person asking the question was asking because they're talking about getting in touch with the voter. We do the best that we can with information that we have.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Those were all the online questions that we had. Are there any other questions from our audience here? I'll give another chance for anybody to answer.
I just want to echo, Janet was asking about absentee meetings. That is completely transparent. Anyone is welcome to come watch us, review the absentee ballot request or the absentee ballot applications on the envelope. See that the board members are sitting up here, usually right up here, watching what the bipartisan team down here on the floor is doing. We do live stream that process. So we try to be very transparent in how we process the absentee ballot. So we encourage people to come.
And we upload those recordings, don't we, do we upload those recordings?
Not routinely at this point. They are available. We download
requested.
them and keep them for administrative purposes, writing minutes, but if they were requested, yes. Yes.
The request forms that are sent out, do they have like an ID number on there, like that you have the ballot and the envelope have ID numbers?
The absentee request form? The absentee request form does not have an identification number on it.
Okay, and if you spoil a ballot, so say somebody doesn't get one, they say they don't get it.
Mhm.
Maybe they did get it. And they say, well, I didn't get it. Could you send me another one? And you spoil that ballot. You have a way of tracking that when it comes in?
Yes, every ballot when it goes out. So we were talking about that, CIV 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's on the envelope, it's on the ballot, that's attached to the voter's record. And so we would spoil that number. So if that ballot or that envelope came back in and we tried to scan it, it would stop us and say, nope, this ballot has been
So it
spoiled.
wouldn't be possible for somebody else to fill out that ballot and then send it back in?
We wouldn't be able to do anything with it because the
Okay.
number would,
Because the
would
number
indicate
is
it's
attached.
spoiled.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, well, I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. We appreciate your time tonight and hope that you will join us next month on August 16th for our voting equipment seminar. Again, we will be hosting in person and online. You can find that information on our website and also if you follow us on social media. So I hope everyone has a wonderful evening and thank you again for coming.
That was good, Robin.